5 a.m. saw me awaking to the sharp report of goat knuckles on my bedroom door. Annie had insisted I have the guest bedroom to myself, and she had relegated Miss Hatchetface to the living room couch. Miss Hatchetface had snuck into my room anyway, and she now stood in front of the full-length mirror in her underwear going through her morning primping routine. I took a moment to appreciate the contrast of the black lace on her red skin before I rubbed the sleep out of my eyes and sat up. "I'm awake," I shouted at the insistent knocking. "Awake ain't ready, is a boy?" Larry's gruff voice called from the other side of the door. "Get your walking shoes on and let's do this thing." I turned to Miss Hatchetface. "Have you seen my shoes?" I asked her. "They're next to the bed," she replied. "Thanks." I reached down for one of the black leather loafers and hurled it at the door. The knocking stopped. Miss Hatchetface tried to give me a disapproving look, but failed, giving me a smile instead. When I finally did get my clothes on, I opened the door to the wafting smell of sizzling bacon and fresh-cooked eggs. The dining room table had been cleared of maps, and there was an array of plates piled high with bacon, scrambled eggs, and French toast, along with a giant jug of iced orange juice. Annie came to the kitchen in a flour-stained apron with a big grin on her face. When she looked at me, Miss Hatchetface grabbed my arm and smiled back. Annie's grin grew wider, but left her eyes. "I hope you two enjoyed the guest bedroom," she said through clenched teeth. "I'm sorry if the couch wasn't to your liking, Miss Hatchetface." "Oh, it was fine," Miss Hatchetface replied, "just not a lot of space to move around." She slid her arm around the back of my waist, looked up at me and winked. Annie's grin grew larger and more plastic yet, and a little vein in her forehead poked out and began throbbing. "Well," she said, "breakfast is ready. Are you much of a cook, Miss Hatchetface?" "I dabble," Miss Hatchetface replied, looking at me expectantly. "Oh," I said, yeah, Miss Hatchetface is the best cook. She competed in Hell's Iron Chef contest." I tried not to gag as I remember Miss Hatchetface's many failed attempts at reproducing human food, attempts which, as often as not, involved tentacles and green slime. "Oh really?" Annie said casually. "I think I saw you on that show. Isn't that the year half of the judges died of explosive diarrhea?" Miss Hatchetface blushed and didn't reply, and we all sat down to a tense breakfast, in which Annie asked me how the food was about half a dozen times, and I replied as diplomatically as I could to avoid igniting a war over bacon and eggs. After breakfast, Larry insisted on hitting the road immediately. "We need to drive out to one of the existing netherworld portals in Florida," he explained. "If Annie creates another one, they'll sense it and be on us in minutes." "What's the closest portal?" Miss Hatchetface asked. "Mei Chinese Buffet. They use the portal to import ingredients." "Right," Annie said. "I love that place's Kung Pao chicken." "It's not chicken," Larry said. "Well, I love that place's Kung Pao something." The sun was shining, and the sky was blue and cloudless, as we piled into the car and drove towards Mei Chinese Buffet. The hostess was a beautiful Oriental woman in a traditional Chinese dress, red silk adorned with gold lotus blossoms. "Can I help you?" she asked. "I need to speak to the owner," Larry said. The woman turned to Larry and smiled. "Mr. Crowder," she said, "it's good to see you again." "I wish I could say the same," Larry replied. "But the last time I was here, you tried to put me in the egg rolls." The hostess shrugged. "Some people like goat," she said. "What do you want with Miss Chen?" "We need to borrow your portal," Larry said. "Top secret netherworld business." "What portal? You really want to play it like that?" The hostess shrugged again. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said. "All of our ingredients are ethically sourced from local farms." "Why you?" Ahem. I cleared my throat. "Can we please hurry this up? There's a lot at stake here. We really don't care what's in your egg rolls. We just want to get to the netherworld as soon as possible." "And what's in it for me?" the hostess asked. "If you don't help us, then I'll put you in the egg rolls," Miss Hatchetface replied. The hostess wrinkled up her nose and cocked her head, putting on a plastic customer service smile. "Right this way," she said. She led us through the restaurant and back through large double doors to the kitchen. "The portal isn't here," she said, pointing to a large walk-in freezer. "You first," said Satan. The hostess's smile became wider and more plastic. "Of course," she said, pulling the large steel door to the walk-in freezer open and strolling inside. We crammed ourselves into the cooler and the heavy door slammed shut behind us. The hostess turned around and smiled. "I don't get it," Satan said. "Where's the portal?" "Right here," the hostess said, flicking a switch on the wall. Suddenly the ground was gone and we were all tumbling through the darkness. "That bitch," Satan yelled, picking himself up off the ground. Miss Hatchetface was already up and staring at the sky, a dark bruised purple without a cloud in sight. She shut the portal behind us, she said. There's no getting back that way. She dumped me in as well, Annie said, unruffling her pants. If Ursnok finds I'm out here, he'll destroy the world immediately. We need to keep a low profile. Huh? Satan said. What? Annie asked. Which one do you think he'll destroy first, hell or earth? Did you really just ask that? Satan shrugged. Larry sighed and pulled an object from his book. It was a smooth glass sphere and looked like an oversized Bloody Mary marble. Tiny pinpricks of light shone from within, floating around as if suspended in water. The pattern of light seemed to mean something to Larry, because he stuffed it back in his pocket and pointed straight ahead. It's that way, he said. Well, what are we waiting for? I replied. Let's go. Not so fast, Larry said. We need to split up. Are you kidding me? I asked. Look, Larry, I don't know what things are like in the goat dimension, but here on Earth we have these things called horror movies, and the number one lesson in all of them is never split up. We don't have a choice, Larry said. Once we make the sacrifice, we'll have to make a quick getaway. I can lead us to Ursnok, but someone has to locate a portal and set up a beacon. The location will read on my thingamajig. Your what? I asked. The thing that tells me where to go. It senses netherworld magic, which means Annie is the one who needs to locate the portal, and Frank and Teddy will go with her. Annie eyed Frank and Teddy doubtfully. Why doesn't Darren come? She asked. Because I said so, Larry said, and I'm running this operation. Fine, but Frank and Teddy, really? I'd be better off alone. Our mission requires subtlety and subterfuge, Larry replied. And there's nothing subtle about a 7-foot teddy bear. Frank and Teddy goes with you, and not with us. Annie sighed. Well, she said, you're the operational expert, and don't you forget it, Larry replied. And so, despite my many protestations, we split up. And Frank and Teddy and Annie wandered off alone into the darkness of the netherworld. Walking in the netherworld felt like walking on the night sky. The only source of light was a ghostly blue luminescence that shone from beneath our feet, and did not penetrate far into the heavy curtain of darkness that surrounded us. The atmosphere reminded me of a funeral home. I felt like speaking in anything above a hushed whisper was somehow inappropriate. Hey, Larry, I whispered after we'd been walking for what felt like an hour. Yes? Larry whispered back. How much further to go? Larry sighed. What, do you have to pee or something? He said. We'll get there when we get there. I know that, I said, but you must have some idea how far it is from here. Larry chewed on the end of his cigar nervously. It's about 16 netherworld hyperseconds, he replied. How long is a netherworld hypersecond? I asked. Larry shrugged. No idea, he said. We walked on in silence for a few more minutes, but the nervous tension was unbearable, and so I spoke again. Larry? Larry spat on the ground. I bet you're really fun on road trips, he replied. What? Nothing. What do you want, kid? Well, I said, hesitant at the sensitive nature of the question I was about to ask. I had a question. Had or have, he said. Spit it out, boy. It's about the sacrifice. Yeah, well, what about it? I was just wondering, I said. If you get sacrificed, then won't you die? Larry stopped short, and I almost ran into his back. He turned around to look at me. An almost comical expression of disbelief had slackened his features so that his cigar hung loosely from the corner of his mouth. Won't I what? He asked. I looked to Miss Hatchetface for reassurance, but she was staring at me with a similar look on her face. I mean, I cleared my throat. If you get sacrificed, you die, right? I mean, that's what a sacrifice is. That's what a sacrifice is, Larry repeated blankly. So let me get this straight. You were planning on killing me this whole time? Well, no. I mean, I didn't really... I mean, that is your job, right? Larry cocked his head and squinted his eyes, pulling the cigar out of his mouth and using it to gesture as he spoke. You think my job is to get murdered, he said, and you just went along without a question? What the hell is wrong with you? Well, I didn't know you were going to be a talking goat at first. I just thought you were going to be a normal one. So now you're saying I'm not normal, he replied. It's not enough that you want to kill me, but you have to insult me first as well. No, I just meant that... You just meant that if I couldn't talk, it'd be okay to kill me, he interrupted. I've got a little nephew who's a deaf mute. You want to kill him too, you Nazi? I was floundering, but Miss Hatchetface came to my rescue. Darren doesn't know anything about it, she said. Everybody around him acted like it was normal, so he just assumed it was. It's not his fault. Yeah, Larry replied. Totally not his fault. That's the problem with you humans. It's never your fault. You're always just going with the flow, doing what everybody else does. even if the end result is terror, death, and famine. Listen, Larry, I'm really sorry, I replied. Yeah, he said, chewing on a cigar. Don't worry about it, kid. It's about what I'd expect. Nobody spoke the rest of the way until we arrived at Urznok's lair. The thingamajig went off in Larry's pocket with a stiff, somewhat robotic British woman's voice. You have arrived at your destination. We're here? I asked. That's what you have arrived at your destination generally means, replied Larry. But I don't see anything, I said. You will, Larry replied. He tapped out a rhythm on the smooth stone surface of the netherworld, and the sound echoed off into the distance, but nothing happened. There was a tense pause, and then we felt it, a faint rumbling beneath our feet. At first, I could only feel the rumbling in the soles of my feet, but then it traveled up my legs and through my torso, finally ending with the chattering of my teeth. Fissures snaked through the ground beneath us, unearthly blue light radiating outwards from them. Soon we were standing on a spiderweb shape of light, and then the obelisk rose forth with a sound of cracking stone, out of the ground like a crown engraved marker. It rose slowly at first, then more and more quickly until the top was out of sight. The sheer size of the thing was enough to give me vertigo, and I fell over on my back as the ground shook beneath my feet. I looked to either side and saw that everyone else had fallen too. Finally, it stopped, and we all pushed ourselves back up off the ground. I turned to Larry. So this is where Urznok lives? I asked. He doesn't live, said Larry, but this is where he resides. So how do we get in? I asked. There should be an entrance on the map you brought, said Larry. Maps? I didn't bring any maps. What? Larry said. That was your only job. Nobody told me I was supposed to bring the maps. Please tell me that you're joking. Why would I be joking at a time like this? Because if you're not joking, then we're royally screwed. He's not joking, Miss Hatchetface said. I was with him the entire time at Annie's house. She never said anything about Darren bringing any maps. Said Satan, who had up to now been quiet. Do you have something to say? Asked Larry. Well, I've just been thinking, Satan said. That must be a strain for you, said Larry. You have no idea, said Satan. But I think I've figured something out. You have? Asked Larry. Yeah, said Satan. Urznok is Annie's father, right? So? And Annie said she had been to May May Buffet before, so she'd know the hostess. And she was bound to know where the netherworld portal was, right? I mean, she's princess of the netherworld. She'd be able to sense it. Larry and Miss Hatchetface shot each other a furtive glance. I don't get it, I said. Where are you going with this? I'm just saying, Satan said. There's no way Annie should have been able to be ambushed by a secret portal to the netherworld and then her forgetting to give Darren the maps. It seems like more than a coincidence. Are you suggesting that she's up to something? I asked. You saw how thoroughly she planned this, Satan said. She had the maps all marked up and everything. She wouldn't have had the time to do that since we've been here. She was already planning something. That's unbelievable, Miss Hatchetface replied. You think that I'm off base? Satan said. No, the part about Annie I believe. She's a devious bitch. I've just never heard you speak more than 2 coherent sentences in a row. Well, devious plans are my specialty, Satan said. I'm upper management. So if she isn't here to help us, Larry said, then what's she here for? Just then the thingamajig went off like a klaxon in his pocket. Larry pulled it out of his pocket and frantically tried to shut it off to no avail. Suddenly, it stopped. When the final echoes of the alarm had faded, the thingamajig spoke once again in its robotic female voice. This thingamajig has detected off-the-charts readings of the netherworld energy that are consistent with netherworld being Urznok, the world eaters, traveling in your direction at 10% of light speed. Estimated arrival is 0.01 netherworld hyperseconds. This thingamajig suggests that you use the remaining few moments of your life to say goodbye to your loved ones, and we thank you for using this thingamajig Incorporated's GPS services. Larry dropped the thingamajig and we watched as it rolled away. I think we're about to find out, he said.